Okay, good morning. Uh, okay, I hope everybody could hear my voice because we're going to start our lecture on how to give directions to our research. Well, basically, working on the research is part when we want to gather data that we want to have for our paper or presentation. Okay, there you go. And then in the last lecture, we've talked about how to choose a topic based on brainstorming method and also how to organize the thing that we derive from the process into more operational and then more on a certain direction or a certain uh, outline that we want to have for a certain publication or a certain presentation. And now we're going to continue in terms of how we gave a little bit details on the direction of our research. Okay, so in this lecture, I'm just going to set up some rules and advices that the authors of The Art of Being a Scientist made in this book. And then all of the content that is written here is pretty beneficial, not only for those who are in graduate studies, but also in undergrad, because if you are on your fourth year or you are moving toward your thesis writing or your final project writing, it means that you are more on the research sides of your activities, and more or less it's kind of similar with those who are working in graduate studies. And then because they tend to do more work on the research besides their lecture, obviously. And then in this part of lecture, I would like to talk about how to set goals and then 5 steps to take in working toward your goals. And as I mentioned earlier, the thing that I'm going to convey in this lecture are coming out from chapter 6 of the corresponding book that I've shown here. And then if you have the ability to get this book, whether it's in the ITB Central Library or any other resources, please make them as the thing that you could read and then implement it at some point of your life, especially during your academic life. Okay, so let me review a little bit from the previous lecture on how to choose a research topic. Okay, we knew that in the beginning we make some brainstorming process that will generate a lot of questions, whether it is logical, illogical, whether it's related or not related, whether it's ridiculous or not ridiculous. And then after that, we basically organize them into a certain logic, into a certain rules, into a certain directions. And then we make some kind of order, prioritize question, etc., and so on, so that more or less it becomes some kind of an outline of our paper or our presentation. Or an outline of our research in general. So, for example, how we prepare the samples, how we prepare and study about how to use the equipment, okay, and then how we make some kind of a reference measurement from so before we take into the real measurement, we make some kind of a reference or a test case measurement first, and then we moving on to the actual measurements, and then we collect the data, we record the data, and then we make some kind of a ordering on the data, whether it's in chronological order, whether it's in positional order, etc., and so on. And then we make inferences, or we make some a general look on the data, whether the data have an outlier, whether it has some kind of a misinformation that is whether it's not connected, or it is irrelevant with the actual data, etc., and so on. And then we make some kind of a pre-processing, and then processing the data so that uh, it will be smoother, etc., and so on. And then we make inferences and interpretation on the data. And then after that, we compile all those findings and then write them down into a report. And then we write them down again as a article that we want to publish, that we want to present in a certain meetings. Okay, so these are the the general background, okay, on how we generate ideas, how we generate some kind of uh, directions, and also how we uh, make a lot of questions so that our research has a certain way or direction that we want to have. But now we take more emphasis on the research, or on the paper writing, and also presentation preparation itself. So first of all, based on the book, we set goals, okay, which gave an actual direction to our action, okay. And then by clearly choosing and defining goals, we provide a focus for action needed to arrive at hope for destination or outcomes. And then defining goals not only helps in creating a mental commitment to make a certain action, it also enables us to formulate a plan to attack towards reaching the desired ends. The most short terms of goals, for example, that you want to plan to accomplish today, are the easiest to define and to pursue. The hardest one is obviously the thing that we could accomplish in the next year, or in the next by the end of semester, or in the end of our study, etc., and so on. The focus needed for success in graduate school and also happens, or also applied in undergraduate schools, and in research in general, however, require the defining of goals that are of significantly longer terms. With well-defined long-term goals spelled out, you can then process to define a sequence of progressively shorter terms ones. And then to be clear out about our meaning, a well-defined goal minimally requires that it is stated in the writing. So as it mentioned here, uh, the thing that you want to research in your especially for your senior year activities, or in your graduate school uh, main activities, besides joining into a lecture, it since the direction itself is, well, in actual settings, your advisor may be hold a very key role. However, your progress, it's determined by our own set of goals. So sometimes when we create or when we have some kind of a discussion with our advisor, they will tend to ask us about what is your working plan. Okay, our working plan sometimes can be managed, can be appear as a timeline of our research, or it could be some kind of a schedule that we want to do in a certain semester or a certain period. So setting goals in real life could be appear as the action or as the reality of how we implement the research timeline that we already have, that we already arrange before we uh, before or when we are planning to work on that type of research. It is also applied if we want to make some kind of an article, if we want to say, if we want to make some kind of publications, which is not uh, need some kind of a heavy research. For example, we want to make some kind of an article that we want to publish in a certain magazine that is not required to have a peer review process, etc., and so on. And then the audience mostly coming out from the general public, etc., and so on. If you want to make an article also in a newspaper or a bulletin, in the students' bulletin, for example, then the approach of making timeline and then the action plan and then the action itself are applied on that example as well. So it is not only works on your final project research. It is not only happens in graduate study research. It does not only applies for research work done by a researcher in university and in a research institution, but also applied in our own activities as well. If we want to make some kind of a generalization of this recipe. So uh, so after, so here, if we are not involved in a research, if we are not in our fourth year at this point, but we have a certain assignment that needs focus to make some kind of an article, to make some kind of a paragraph, to make some kind of a writings, these set of directions or these sets of suggestion that is explained by the author of the Art of Being Scientist book could be applied also on that kind of activities. Okay, so here they say is to make some kind of goals that we need to set, and then we try hard to implement that, to do the action, the real action on how we to fulfill that goal. Okay, in research, it is likewise crucial to define goals. What do you want to discover? What do you want to achieve? Uh, who do you want to satisfy? Do you want to satisfy a pure scientific curiosity, or you want to satisfy some type of clients that need help in terms of solving their problems, etc., and so on? And then publish, and then how many papers that you want to publish, and how advance rapidly in your career, and then how do you want to advance? Do you want to advance rapidly in your career or not? Or do you want to develop a patent or marketable product? and then etc. So, so the attainment of such general goals require that more specific ones to be set and addressed beforehand. Your goal could be to find out how a specific biological process works. It might be a desire to make your name by presenting a breakthrough at a conference X, for example. So decide on what you really want to achieve and then work hard to reach your goals. This is the only way to maintain control over the direction in which you are heading. Okay, okay. In research, one usually proceeds from one phase to the next. A phase in research is usually focused on answering a specific questions or range of questions. This could, for example, involve a literature research, okay, or literature searching, the formulation of a research plan, the creation of software, the performing of an experiment, etc., and so on, which may also include data processing, data interpretation, uh, performing some kind of a exploratory data analysis, or do some kind of a cross study with other publication, etc. And so on. And often it is essential to finish each step defined by a specific milestones before moving on. Okay, so it is better for us. So the desired one is obviously to work on certain activity first and then moving on after you finish with that activity. Okay, so that, for example, if you have 10 steps that you want to do, so finish with the first one and then moving on to the second, finish with the second and then moving to the third, etc. and so on. Although, however, uh, there are certain period or a certain time when you need to make some kind of a revisions. Okay, you need to make some kind of a revisions. So if that happens, the revision will be in conjunction with the progress. So you don't need to stop the general progress, but you need also to make some kind of a revision, a little bit of revision, so that it will not hinder the actual process. But nevertheless, if the revision itself is so crucial, it's so so in terms of publication, you need some kind of a major revision, then you need to stop at that point of your work, and then you starting again from the step where you need to make that major revision. So either way, so if the revision is kind of minor, then you don't need to stop the whole process. You just need to continue with the work, and then at the same time apply the revision that is required on your work. However, if your revision is a major one, then you need to stop on that process and then restarting again on the phase where it needs some major revisions. Okay, one might need the result of a specific task in order before proceeding to the next. For example, the creation of a work plan depends on the throughout knowledge of the current state of research in the field. So a literature research is necessary in order to learn what is presently known. The design of future experiment will depends on the outcome of the measurement previously made. And in practice, we work toward our goals by realizing a planned sequence of sub-goals. Confusing the order of the milestone can lead to an ineffective line of research, and then it will consume your time. And so therefore, you need to consult with your advisor for looking up for how to make our research more effective, to become more efficient, have a concise steps, so that it will not basically consume more time, because you have a time period for your own study, right? You don't want to exceed the time limit that the university gave you to finish your degree, basically. With a well-through sequence, with a well thought through sequence, reaching a particular milestones gave confidence to take the next step in research. Okay, so uh, there is some kind of a, oh yeah, in some of the points here, it gave us some kind of a clue that literature search is one of the important process of uh, our research itself, or on how we going to develop our articles or our presentation. Yes, it is true that we need to know what is the current development of the topic that we want to write about. We need to know what is the current state of the theoretical uh, fundaments of the fundamental, or we need to know what is the what is the current state of the fundamental theories of the subject that you want to talk about. And we need to also know about the major applications that are on trend that is related to the topic as well. So by looking up in literature search, we will knew what type of direction, we will know what are the gap. For example, we can know what are the missing link of or a missing point of one research to another, so that we can fill that gap, we can fill that emptiness from our own research, for example. So so here in the last part of the lecture, I guess the author is not asking, but provides us about 5 steps to take in working toward your goal. First, as I mentioned earlier, define your goals. Be explicit about your goals. Make them sufficiently specific, and writing them down, which will help you to create a strong commitment to them, so that they can be translated into actions. And then remember that success is what defines success. Often lead to a more clearly specified and sometimes more measurable endpoints of the chosen goals, which can help you work toward their realizations. And then note also that having a timeline will be particularly helpful once you've defined your goals. So this is the first step, define your goals. The second one is to decide if you are willing to pay the price. You will be sacrificing your time. You will be sacrificing your well, your time of sleep, your time for leisure activities, your time of gathering with friends, sacrificing the time when you need to gathering with your families, etc., and so on. And you need to study. You need to spend more time to study more, to look for literature more, to do measurements, to collect both your chosen field and the professional skills need to be successful. This will entail hard work and in time some not you are willing to follow through your larger goals. It is always happen during research, because sometimes when we collect data, when we want to make some kind of a meaningful interpretation of the data itself is not showing, it's not giving you the hypothesis, giving you the result that is matched with your hypothesis. Or maybe the process of collecting the data itself is it was simple at the beginning, but it becoming harder and harder when you proceed with your work. And then it is also happen when you need to working out on more detailed analysis of your data, which requires more study, requires more math, requires more computer programming, and etc. and so on. Maybe you need to create, or maybe you need to generate uh, more than 10 Microsoft Excel spreadsheet in order to analyze the data. You might need to learn Python or MATLAB in order to analyze the data in more sophisticated ways. So those are the process that might you need to that might part of the sacrifices that you need to take in order to finish the job, in order to meet the goals of your study, of your research, of your activities in general. And to excel in research, you must be willing to, that is, to make conscious choice to put in energy necessary to learn new things, follow the literature, the scientific literature, establish contact in scientific community, take steps to foster your creativity, and have the courage to be truly innovative. You are not a frog in the shell. You must communicate not only with your research, with your advisor, but also with your colleague. Because sometimes if you are working in electrical engineering, for example, sometimes the applications works in geophysical engineering, or maybe the applications are used in biomedical engineering. So so don't put yourself into a passive mode, but work on active in terms of meeting new relation, meeting new friends in order to study from them about the thing that you might need in working with your research itself. Because sometimes the people who are, well, for example, if you have a colleague in another research group, for example, but they use the same method, the same coding, the same process when they are analyzing the data, then you might need to communicate with them. You need to talk with them. You may need to have lunch with them, or have a drink with them, or go to coffee together with them, so that you could make good connections, good networking with them, and then you might collaborate on how to. You might ask them to and permission how to use the programming for our own, and then make some kind of a benefits also for them, because cooperating, because networking, it is not a one uh, directional relations, but also a mutual relations between we between us as the first party who wants to use the program, and then other people who really owns the program and have more knowledge about the program, so that they can teach you and how to make some kind of a guidance in terms of solving our problems. And yeah, it needs to be beneficial for both parties. A mismatch between your goals and your willingness to invest in them is a recipe for disappointment. Your choice can work out either way, but you need still to choose whether you want to make sacrifices. Yeah. And then the third step in working towards your goal is to define a strategy. Once you have decided that you truly want to realize your goals, define with care your strategy for achieving them, for planning steps to take, and for defining milestones along the way toward the goals. And don't forget to include a timeline. Again, if again, put your strategy on the paper in order to make it more tangible, and then start executing the plan. So as it is mentioned by the author, it is better for us to make some kind of a paper, and then we post it on our bedroom walls, in our office wall, so that it could be our reminder on keeping up with the goals of our work. And then number 4 is to evaluate your strategy. We need to make sure that our strategy is pinpoint to the correct direction. If not, then we need to revise. We need to make corrections. We need to sacrifice our time to make corrections, etc., and so on. So that while executing your plan, you will probably discover that some portion work out well and others don't, which is normal. Okay, this is part of human normal activity, because nobody is perfect and no plan is foolproof. This is aggravated by the fact that in the beginning, we don't know what we don't know. So after we know, we make revisions, we make corrections so that the goals become clearer and easier to attain. Our initial ignorance often leads to a strategy that needs adjusting, so make adjustment. And therefore, periodically evaluate your strategy by identifying its weakness and strong points, assessing what works and what does not. And then the last step is to modify our strategy. Adjust your strategy based on evaluation of which our action have been effective and which are not. And likely, you will go through cycles of reevaluating and modifying your strategy, making changes to the execution of your plan, of our plan. Okay, so those are the 5 steps on working toward to take that we need to take in working towards your goals. And then we need also to realize what are our resources. Consider 2 basic ways of learning. The first is to learn by encountering your own mistake and then figuring out how to correct them. The second way is to imitate the method of others. Although both approaches to learning or a combination of both work well, the second one, emulating others or imitating others, can be much more efficient investment of your time. The essential point here is that you are likely to be surrounded by wealth of expertise and possibility for getting help. The people around you can be your most valuable resource. Most people are flattered you to have sought their advice, including for help in defining, evaluating, and adapting your strategy on the basis of the evaluation. So make sure that you have friends. Make sure you have colleagues in your research. You may ask them if you have problems. You may discuss with them whether whether you want to make some kind of a clarification or make some kind of a correction in your own writings, in your own research, in your own presentation, slide preparation, etc., and so on. Because most of the time they will help you. Most of the time they will, as it is mentioned here in the last session, they are flattered for you to have sought their advice, including for helping in defining, evaluating, and adapting your strategy. And then being a goal or process-oriented. There is, of course, no hard distinction between those who are predominantly goal-oriented or process-oriented. It is worthwhile, nonetheless, to be aware of this differing motivation. In the reality of everyday life, we do not always achieve our goals, especially in competitive situations. Being too much oriented toward goal make a person vulnerable to disappointment and frustration. And furthermore, the moment of reaching a goal is usually short-lived, while the process of working toward a goal is often lengthy. So for this reason, it is valuable not focus exclusively on reaching goals, but also to enjoy the journey toward the goal. And then being goal-oriented and process-oriented are not necessarily contradictory. The key is to strike a healthy balance between our focus, whether it's on goal-oriented or process-oriented. The beauty is that being absorbed in the process of reaching a goal often makes us more effective in actually realizing that goal. And of course, not every task along the way to meeting goals will be inherently joyful. So nevertheless, the effort to consciously seek joy in whatever we do not only can help make the task less wondrous and even more pleasurable. It can offer the best prospect of yielding a satisfying outcome. Okay, more than goals and process is the meaning of our work. More than the goals that we set and the satisfaction that we can have achieved from the process of our work, that work might or might not have special meaning and values to us or others. The concept of meaning is much less tangible than that of goals, but this make no less important. The meaning of work is described by Schuster in the following way. We must learn to distinguish between purpose and meaning in life. Purpose has something to do with being productive and setting goals and knowing what needs to be done and doing it. It is easy to have purpose, to write 7 letters a day, to wax the floor, to finish this legal brief, to make out those report, to complete this degree. That's purpose. Meaning, on the other hand, depends on asking myself who will care and who will profit and who will be touched and who will be forgotten or hurt or affected by my doing these things. Purpose determines what I will do in this part of my life. Meaning demands to know why I'm doing it and with what global result. Okay, so I think those are uh, ways on how we give directions more clearly on our work. I hope that is beneficial for all of the students that take this scientific communications class, because this class not only uh, gave opportunities for you to talk and write in English in terms of scientific topic, but also gave you some kind of a theoretical background, uh, useful uh, knowledge that we need to have as a beginner writer, as a beginning scientist, as a beginning researcher, or a beginner professional, etc. And so on. And so those are probably some tips that is given by the authors so that we could have a meaningful and also enjoyable activities in research, in study science, in pursuing our degree, etc. and so on. Okay, I think with that, we are conclude our lecture today. In next week, in Thursday, we will talk more. Okay, on how to manage our research, and probably we were going uh, to begin talking about how to avoid plagiarism. So since we are done with uh, how how do I find research topic, and then how we define our research question, and then how we gave directions to our research. In Thursday, we could uh, talk more on research management and also how to avoid plagiarism, so that our schedule could be a little bit forward than it is scheduled or than is planned in the last time, because uh, we're going to have probably about 30 or 35 students this semester in this class. So arranging time for your presentation needs a lot of effort. And so there are some parts of the lecture notes or richer video that you might need to study by yourself, which are already given here in the EduNext. Okay, so if you have access to EduNext, you probably you probably went here and then you access all of the given video here as your study material, and then you can also access these lecture notes over here that I prepare for you for the corresponding weeks, so that you have background knowledge and you have educate knowledge and fundamentals that you might need to working out on your paper, working out on your presentation, on your poster, etc., and so on. Okay, so there will be a little bit there will be a little bit a class material topic that need to be addressed faster compared to the planned schedule, so that we could have more times in preparing our next presentations, such as the 3 minutes presentation, 8-minute presentation, and the final presentation, because we have 30 or more students enrolled in this class. Okay, so I think that's all for today's class. Thank you all for your attention. We'll meet again on Thursday, talking about resource management and how to avoid plagiarism. Okay, let me stop the recording.